Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a hot minute, like a year, I don't know, ish, since I posted anything, but I thought I'd get back to it. I enjoyed doing this. I have time. Let's start talking about books again. Yay, books! So here we are at the end of September 2024, and so far this year I have read 108 books. My goal for the year was 120, 10 books a month. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be knocking that out of the park. So now I'm like, can I reach 150 books by the end of the year? So there's 13 and a half weeks. That means I need to read about 3.5 books a week. I can do that, right? I can do that. I'm going on a long cruise in November, and I pretty much read a book a day when I'm on a cruise, especially when I go with my mom, because we tend to just chill a lot. So yeah, I can read a book a day. No problem. 150, guys. 150. All right. So obviously I'm not going to talk about 108 books in this vlog. I'm pretty sure I would lose all of you, myself included, to be honest. 108 is a lot. But what I did think I'd talk about is my 5-star books that I've read so far this year. Because that's what we're here for anyway, right? I want to hear about the good stuff. I don't care about the mediocre stuff unless it's to tell me not to read it, not to waste my time. We'll cover that in another video, the stuff not to waste your time on. But for now, let's talk about 5 stars. So I have my handy list here, and I have 16 books that I've rated 5 stars this year. And I'm going to go through this in the order that I read them through the year. So it's not like one 5-star is higher than another 5-star. This is just the order in which I have read them. So the first 5-star book I read this year was The Librarian of Burned Books by Brianna Labuskes. I apologize if I am messing that up horribly. So The Librarian of Burned Books is set primarily in World War II. It's obviously historical fiction, but it goes across several timelines. It starts in the 1930s and actually goes all the way up through relatively modern times. But it is told from different people's perspectives. A woman who was an author and who got an opportunity to go and do I think they called it like a cultural experience that was essentially sponsored by the Nazis in the early 1930s. And when she gets to Germany from the United States, one of the first things that happens is she goes to a book burning. And that was really where she started to say, wait, here I was with these guys I thought were pretty cool, and we were hanging out, and maybe things aren't quite what I thought they were. And then there's a woman who's kind of part of the French Resistance. And anyway, it was a really good book, multiple points of view, multiple timelines. But yeah, definitely recommend that. The Librarian of Burned Books. The second book, I just threw stuff on the floor, don't mind me, is The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. Colgan? Again, I don't know how to pronounce people's names. So this is part of what I threw out. Anyway. So The Bookshop on the Corner follows a young woman who is a librarian in the UK. And I read this in January and it's late September, so forgive me. But so I'm pretty sure her library lost funding and she lost her job. So she decides that she is going to go, I want to say, up into Scotland. And she basically buys a little minibus and she converts it into a mobile used bookstore. And I think a big part of why I loved this book so much is that this is the dream, people. This is the dream. Like, let me just drive around and like talk to people about books all day long. Like, it's the dream. So anyway, it's a really cute book. It's light. It's just happy. It's just a happy book. So read that one. Let's see. Next up, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony. Why is everybody's name so hard? Doer? I don't know. All the Light We Cannot See. So this is not a new book. It's one of those that's been sitting on my to be read shelf for years probably. But it's historical fiction. It's World War II. I know it's going to be heavy. It's one of those where you're looking at it thinking, I know I'm probably going to like this book, but I really need to be in the right headspace to pick this up and read it. And I was not wrong about that. It's told, again, from multiple points of view, from like Nazi children, like the Hitler youth, who end up becoming soldiers. And then again, a lot of French resistance. I will tell you this, I do remember this because this has a thing in it that I hate. So it's a 5-star book. It has a thing that I hate. Once I tell you about this, you'll never not be able to see it. Obviously the book is written in English, right? A big part of the book takes place in Germany. I know they're speaking German. A big part of the book takes place in France. I know they're speaking French, but the book is in English. But every so often we've decided we need to drop in a German phrase or a French phrase. And then I'm going like, what the hell does that mean? I don't speak French. I don't speak German. And I think what the author's trying to do, this is not, unique to this author. I've seen this happen in many other books. It drives me bananas. I think what they're trying to do is like kind of reinforce that cultural thing, or especially if it's something that maybe doesn't have a great English translation, something that would be a French saying that an American or an English speaker would just never say, that just doesn't translate well. But it just annoys me. Like, either speak French or speak English. If I want to read the book in French, I'll read the book in French. I should say that because I won't read the book in French. I wouldn't make it very far. Anyway, otherwise, All the Light We Cannot See, for sure. I think they've made a Netflix series. I haven't watched it, so I don't know. Next up, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Thank you for naming yourself something that I can pronounce. Remarkably Bright Creatures. This is probably a book that you've been seeing around. It's got a really colorful cover. This book is so charming, but it ends up having a little bit more like depth to the story than I think I expected it to. It's kind of about finding your family, not necessarily the one you're born with always. But one of the really magical things about this is a big part of the book takes place in an aquarium, and one of the characters and one of the perspectives is from a giant Pacific octopus. And he will absolutely become your favorite character. He is fantastic. So it's very charming. It's very sweet. But it's also got a really good story to it. So Remarkably Bright Creatures, definitely read that. Next up, I'm going to skirt past this one pretty quickly because if you have not heard about this book, who hasn't? It's The Women by Kristin Hannah. This is about nurses in the Vietnam War. Kristin Hannah is a remarkable historical fiction writer, in my opinion. Everything that I have read by her, I have loved. She's going to rip your heart out. Absolutely. I learned so much about the experience of the women in particular, but just about the Vietnam War itself. It's really, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I think that I am of just the age that I was not alive during the Vietnam War. My dad was in the military. He was an Air Force mechanic. My uncles were in the Vietnam War, but I was not alive yet, so I don't remember it. And then maybe I'm at the age where it hadn't really made it into history books yet by the time I went to school, was in school. So I didn't learn that much about the Vietnam War. So read that for sure. Brace yourself to have your heart ripped completely in two. Next one, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I've read a whole bunch of Riley Sager's books. I've read most of his books at this point. Most of them I like. There's a couple that I'm not a fan of. The House Across the Lake. Hate that book. Burn it. Maybe don't burn it. We've already talked about burning books. Anyway, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is about a woman who is like a home care nurse, and she gets an opportunity. Like she's kind of run into problems because her mother died under perhaps suspicious circumstances while she had been in her care. Her mom, I think, I can't remember, had cancer. She had been very, very ill, and then she overdosed on her medication and died. So it was kind of like, did the nurse, was she either negligent and gave her the medicine or gave her access to the medicine when she shouldn't have, or did she intentionally overdose her mother? So she's kind of under this cloud of suspicion, and she goes to become a home health care nurse for a woman in a mansion that's on the hill. It's kind of got a dark history to it, and it is a really, really good twisty thriller where you are just going, what is happening? You know, what's going on? So anyway, that was a good one. I'm in a psychological thriller Facebook group, and I see this book recommended probably several times a week. So it's one to read for sure, if you especially if you like a thriller. Okay, next, back to historical fiction, is The First Ladies by Marie Benedict. Again, yay, a name I can pronounce. So The First Ladies started a little bit slow for me, but it definitely really picked up. And again, I learned so much reading this book. So it's historical fiction, but it's based on the relationship between Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune, who were both very staunch civil rights activists. So Mary McLeod Bethune was an African-American woman, and just to really read about their different experiences in life. Mary McLeod Bethune's parents had been slaves. And here she was, like, best friends with the First Lady of the United States, and just what they experienced, what they did to move civil rights forward in the United States, especially at a time when we were worried about the Great Depression and the Second World War, and people weren't really ready to talk about civil rights yet. We had bigger fish to fry, so to speak, in the eyes of the government. So anyway, great book. Really recommend that one. Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. Sarah Pinborough? Yeah, Behind Her Eyes. This book is also a Netflix series, and I have watched the Netflix series. I will say it follows the book really, really well, but you absolutely must read the book first, and here's why. Part of what made the book so great and so thrilling and so suspenseful is you don't know what's true when you're reading it. So this follows a young woman in London, I think it was in London, who works as, I want to say, a secretary to a psychiatrist. And she begins having an affair with a psychiatrist, but at the same time, she becomes very close, good friends with his wife. And she is basically getting an account of their relationship from him and from her. And what you don't know as a reader is whose account is true. Because obviously they are very different perspectives on the relationship. But when you're watching the show, they're kind of showing you things as they're happening, so you kind of know who's telling the truth and who's not. And that takes a lot of the suspense out of it. So Behind Her Eyes, absolutely read that one before you watch the show. But if you watch the show is still good. It follows the book really well, better than most. Okay, next up, The Wishing Game by Meg Shaffer. So this book is magical. That's, I think, the best way to say it. It's not magical in the sense of, like, Harry Potter is magical, but it's magical in the sense that, like, things can happen. You know, dreams can come true. Dreams can come true. So this follows as a young woman who works as, I want to say she was like a part-time teaching assistant, and she does not have any good relationship with her family. She's very, very isolated, very on her own, not making a lot of money. And she develops a mother-son relationship with a boy in her class who is in foster care. And it is her dream. It is her wish. It is her whole goal in life to adopt this little boy. I want to say he's like 7. But every time she goes and talks to the, social worker, they're like, you can't. You're renting a room in an apartment with like 6 roommates who smoke and drink and carry on all night. You don't have a car, like that. You can't support this kid. You don't have any family relationships. You cannot adopt this child. And she gets an opportunity to enter a contest where at the end of it, whoever wins the contest will have their wish granted. And it is being held by an author who wrote a book series called The Clock Island Mysteries. I think it was The Clock Island Mysteries, that she, they're children's books, and she read them as she was a kid, and she idolizes this so much. And So she goes and stays on Clock Island with this author who is running this contest. Anyway, read it. It's really good. Magical. Okay, next up. This is a book that's a little off kilter for me because I think it's technically considered horror. And I don't do horror because I don't like gore. I love a thriller. I love mystery. I don't like gore. So this is called The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. So this book starts out, I can't tell you too much because then you'll know what's happening. But it starts out, and it's told from the perspective both of the child, the girl with all the gifts, and her teacher. But it starts with every time they go to class in the morning, they're basically strapped into a wheelchair, they're strapped down, wheeled into the classroom, taught, wheeled back to their cells, distance between the children and the professors. Like there's no interaction. There's no interaction between the other, with the children to each other. I can't tell you too much more than that, other than to tell you it was not something that I would normally read, but I really did genuinely like it. It again took a little bit to get going, a little bit to know what was going on. But then it was very action-packed, very thrilling, but then also really makes you think about the state of the world, for sure. Okay, next up is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. So Black Cake is a Bahamian delicacy, apparently. I can't remember, was it Jamaica, Bahamas? I can't remember. Caribbean. There we go. It's a Caribbean delicacy. So this story starts out as being told by a woman whose mother has recently passed away. And she was a Caribbean national when she was a child. Caribbean history. And the whole book is essentially told going back and forth in time between the modern day, where this woman is essentially listening to audio tapes that her mother recorded for her to tell her about her history. And through all of this, she finds that her mother is not at all who she thought she was. That legitimately, like, she changed her name. She ran away from her island when she was a young adult, late teen, early adult. And it was just really, really interesting. It was a very interesting cultural perspective for me, a different viewpoint, about the Caribbean islands, about people of African culture, and their experience in the United States and in the United Kingdom, racism, all of that, while still maintaining their own culture. It was really, really, it was a really compelling story. Let's up. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So, this is my shelf. It's right there. It's thin. So it's a quick read. I will say that. It's a quick read. This one is about a young woman, probably like mid-20s, and everything in her life is going badly. In fact, the book essentially starts with her saying, 20 hours until I kill myself, then 10 hours until I kill myself, then 5 hours until I kill myself. So I will say, first of all, if you are sensitive about suicide, be thoughtful about reading this book, because it's about suicide. But ultimately, she finds herself in this place called the Midnight Library, where every book that she picks up is essentially an opportunity for her to live a different life. So think about something in your life that you've deeply regretted, that you wish you could change. You can do that through these books. So, hey, I wish I had or hadn't married this person. Okay? What would my life look like if I had or hadn't done that? And it shows you. So it's an opportunity to kind of play through that regret, in essence. So the whole thing ultimately comes to be that some of them are not what she thought they would be. So she had a deep regret that she didn't marry this man. She gets to see what it would look like if she had. Maybe it's not what she thought it was going to be. So it's kind of about living with regret. But anyway, read the book. It's good. Next up, Just for the Summer by Abby Jiminez. Also right there. So first of all, I will preface by saying, in my mind, Abby Jiminez can do no wrong. I love her deeply. This is actually the only romance I think that's on my list. It is. What I love so much about Abby Jiminez is, first of all, she's hysterical. Like, follow her Instagram. She's so funny. And second, what I love so much about her characters is that her characters have real problems. I get really annoyed when I'm reading a book and it's just the miscommunication trope. Like, if we would just talk to each other for approximately 3 minutes, this whole thing could be worked out and everything would be fine. But no, we got to just play this whole book out because we can't be bothered to speak to one another. That drives me banana pants. Her characters have real problems. So this one is, I think it's called Part of Your World. It's sequential, but if you don't read the books in order, it's completely fine. All you're going to get is probably a few little Easter eggs in there that you will have missed. But you don't need to have read the books in order to enjoy any one of her books. Okay, the only repeat author I have on here, The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. So this book is it's a thriller. It takes place at an all-girls summer camp where the main character is returning to the summer camp. I think it's 15 years after she had been there as a camper at age 13. And the camp has been closed that whole time because when she was there at age 13, 3 girls disappeared. Like, they just completely disappeared. No one knows to this day. No one knows what happened to them. And she is determined. They've decided to reopen the camp. That she's been invited back as a art teacher. And she is determined that she is going to be the one that's going to solve this after 15 years. Which, first of all, I think is a little bit stupid. Like, the police haven't figured it out. People have been looking like, okay. But she decides she is going to go back and she is going to find out what happened to these girls 15 years later. And that is all I'm going to tell you. The next book up, this is a fantasy novel called The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owens. My friend Allie recommended this to me. It actually just came out at the beginning of September. You can get it on Kindle Unlimited. The best way to describe this, I think, would be Percy Jackson meets The Hunger Games. It's great. Read it. And last up on my list here is A Man Called Ove by Fredrick Bachman. I think it's Fredrick, not Fredrick. Fredrick Bachman? Fredrick? See, we're back to not being able to pronounce names. So this is actually a Swedish novel. It's been translated into English, of course. The movie came out last year, 2 years ago, I don't know, starring Tom Hanks, but they changed the name to A Man Called Otto. I have not seen the movie, so I have no idea how it compares to the book. But this is basically like this really cantankerous guy named Ove. I will say it's heavy. His wife has passed away from cancer. I think it was cancer. And he just doesn't want to go on with life anymore. He doesn't have any, why live with that? But every time he thinks he's going to kill himself, something happens and he realizes he is still needed. So the book it's really heavy, but ultimately really uplifting. So, and of course, the movie stars Tom Hanks. Again, haven't watched it, don't know. Okay, so there you go. That's all of my 5-star reads for so far for 2024. I'm currently reading 2 books. I'm currently reading Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate, which is historical fiction. I'm only about 50 pages into it, so I'm not super far in. I'm enjoying it so far, and it's bouncing back and forth between 2 timelines, 1939 and modern day, where it seems that it's really about the orphan train, like the orphan, like sale of orphans, essentially. So I haven't gotten too far into it yet. And then also I'm reading a book called 13 by Steve Cavanaugh. This is another one of those books, so it's a thriller. I'm about 40% through it because I'm listening to it on as an audiobook. This is why a lot of times I have multiple books going, because I might have one on my Kindle, I might have a physical book, and then I might also have an audiobook going. So 13 I'm listening to as an audiobook, and I've seen recommended to me so many times that I couldn't not read it. I was really excited to read it. so far it's just feeling, it's a kind of a courtroom drama, and it's feeling a lot like The Lincoln Lawyer. A lot of pieces of this are feeling like The Lincoln Lawyer. So I'm waiting for it not to feel so much like The Lincoln Lawyer. I mean, I like it, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so there we go. I think you guys are caught up. Good job. More will come. I'm sure I'll talk more about maybe books that I do not recommend in future videos, as well as maybe some that were maybe not a 5-star, but were still worth reading. So in the comments, let me know, have you read any of these? What are your best 5 stars so far this year that I'm missing? So, all right. Thanks for hanging in there with me. It's good to be back. Miss you guys. All right. Take care. Bye.